If you're selling high and you're buying higher 180 days later, you can be in a compromised position. The idea is to sell high and buy low.
He has mastered the capital gain tax, a real estate investment and exit expert, Brett Swarts.
There's three concepts to consider: having a tax flow mindset, a cash flow mindset, debt flow mindset. We want to build your capital gains tax exit plan before negotiation of selling your company.
When you invest in assets, you're locking up your ability to access money.
In real estate, yes, it's known as an illiquid asset, which typically takes 3, 6, or 12 months to sell, versus the liquid assets, which you can sell within a couple days. So you're going to have a balance between the two.
Why the heck would I need a trust? I'm never planning on selling.
You make all this ridiculous money over here. If you have no tax flow depreciation offset it, then you're just paying massive tax.
Pretend this whole thing collapses. What doesn't change that we still have to figure out how to solve for?
Real estate. It's a hard asset. It's an absolute need. It's known to be inflation resistant. Freedom and flexibility with capital, and that's the battle we're in.
Mr. Brett Swarts, thank you. Welcome to the Golden Mic. Thanks for coming on.
Josh, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We met, when did we meet?
So 6 months ago, Orlando, Fun Hawking Live.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Right? Yes. So we got a picture together. Very blurry picture. But I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you today. I want to set the tone. I'm excited because unless you're giving off an impression that is very different than who you are, you seem very smart. You seem very like you've thought through what you do and know things. And I like that. I like being able to press and to really understand things. You've got your shirt on that says tax flow, not just cash flow. So we're in the wealth space. We're entering the world of wealth, the world of capital gains tax, the world of understanding money and exits and all things. Is this the one that says friends don't let friends, what does it say?
Friends don't let friends overpay in a 1031 exchange.
There you go. Okay. So I'm going to pass it over to you. Help me understand, who are you? What do you do in a nutshell? And I think setting the stage for how credible you are is important, particularly around the conversation of money. I'm good friends with Brad Gibb. Few people we need to know. We need to know how smart you are when it comes to this, how well you thought through. So brag on yourself a little bit, set the tone.
Yeah, excellent. So grew up in the real estate space, which is, I say real estate's in the blood because we developed houses in the Bay Area of California. This is the MC Hammer days.
Yeah.
Okay. So these were, Hammer Pants. My brother and I, we would go to the job site with my mom and my dad, and we helped build houses. So MC Hammer had this big old house on top of the hill, and my dad built some of the smaller ones. And so, which was cool, but these are still really big houses. So this is Mission San Jose. He'd also go into the Silicon Valley and build houses. So he built a bunch of houses. So we grew up on the job site learning to work hard, but we were the first to graduate from college from either side of the family. So my mom and my dad both wanted us to go and use our brains versus just our muscles, right? So wealth and entrepreneurship and, controlling your own destiny was kind of built into us at a young age from my dad. And then my mom worked as a nurse. And so she was very, caring and kind and like just, all the belief in the kids, right? That you guys can do whatever you set your mind to. Parents got divorced at a young age. Okay. Now this is a big part of the wealth journey because my dad had all the money. And let's just say in the 80s and the 90s, they didn't have as strict of laws for paying child support. Okay. And so live with my mom 90% of the time. Dad taught us how to work hard, be an entrepreneur, build real estate, build wealth, but didn't really want to give mom any money. Now we'd go hang out with dad, and dad had the Harleys, he had the Corvettes, he had the boats, we'd go on the trips, he'd buy us the stuff. Like we can kind of just run a little bit more wild at my dad's house, right? Mom, we're going to church. We're going, she's putting us in sports. She's sacrificing. She's working multiple jobs. And so we got both sides of the wealth, spectrum, very wealthy and then like no money, like hardly afford a car. But when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, when all this is going on up to like 14, you don't really know the difference. Right. In fact, you start learning about divorce and what that means at a young age. But really it's more like 12 to 14, you're seeing the differences and you're asking questions about what happened. But the point of all this was at a young age, I didn't want wealth to come in between families. I saw how wealth can separate families and how it can cause stress, and through divorce and how it can be used kind of more of a weapon versus like bringing, freedom and flexibility and, people to be able to connect. So, we wanted to work really hard. So fast forward, I had a chance to play basketball in college, which was really cool. So we earned a scholarship there. And then I took an internship at a place called Marcus and Millichap. And this is where it went from just practical application of building houses to mental application of helping people to buy and sell multifamily properties at a place called Marcus and Millichap. So it's like an investment real estate firm. Okay. And so all of this was, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but I can kind of keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
And so the market was actually going really well. And this was exciting, right? It was 2006. Things were booming.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't, right? Yeah. And when it wasn't, we went from making a little bit of money to like nothing overnight. And maybe you've been there, and all your listeners have too, where you're like, hey, how am I going to actually put money on the table? Like I have food on the table. I have no money. Yeah. This is 100% commission, right? It's like boiler room. You're just cold calling, you're dialing for dollars is a lot of the way we would say it.
Yeah.
But our goal was to get on the other side of the phone to own real estate that could produce cash flow and to get passive, financial freedom.
Yeah.
So we were learning a lot. I was learning a lot, but I wasn't making like any money because, part of the market crashed, and we were going, what are we going to do? So I moved with my brother, who is small condo.
And how old were you at this point?
So at this point, I just graduated college. So I guess I would be 18, so like 21, 22, 23, okay. Right around there.
Yeah. And what did you study in college?
So it was 2 degrees and a minor. So I did business management,
okay,
Bible and theology, and a minor in counseling psychology.
What's your, are you religious now?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah.
Okay. So your background is in that. Okay. And a minor in what?
Counseling psychology.
Counseling psychology. Uh-huh. Interesting. All right.
And by the way, I did it all in 5 years, by the way. Part of why I did it in 5 years is I blew my ACL out. I actually went into to college just to study business, but the scholarship I got for the school called William Jessup University required a Bible degree. Well, I'm like, I'm a Christian. I can. That's fine. I'll jump into that. That's cool. And ended up being the best degree, like amazing. Like I thought I knew a little bit about the Bible, but it's like how much you really don't know once you start studying it really practically, right? Yeah. So 2 degrees, and I added the minor when I had the ACL surgery because I blew my ACL after signing my scholarship, which was a huge thing for me. Part of my success, as getting into college was big. But then getting that scholarship was big. And this kind of ties into the story in that I had been successful in so many things up to this point, despite the single parent kind of home kind of thing. And I come through this, and all of a sudden I am like all excited to be like the best real estate person ever. Right?
And sorry, how did you get into real estate again?
So I took an internship at a place called Marcus and Millichap.
Oh, that's right. Okay. The internship.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So now the market crashes, and now I'm making next to nothing. And so you did what every real estate or entrepreneur wannabe does. You get a side hustle. My side hustle was Cheesecake Factory. In fact, it was my wife and I's favorite restaurant.
Yeah.
And get the avocado egg rolls. I'm like, man, like if I could sell this on nights and weekends, I can keep the daydream going, which is the career at Marcus and Millichap. And I call it kind of the hybrid entrepreneur because you're working for a corporation. It was still private at that point, but it's 100% commission. Yeah. And it's huge opportunity for upside, but you're kind of running like a mini real estate company inside of their company. And so that's what I did. I negotiate with banks by day and help my clients work through their challenges. And then by night, I worked Cheesecake Factory. And that's where I also saw the wealth crash of a lot of our clients because now they had made $5, $10, $15, $20, $50 million, and they're losing half or all of their wealth over the next couple of years.
Wow.
So I'm going through my own little financial struggle, right? They're going through their massive financial hardship.
You got to watch that.
I got to watch that.
That's very interesting. Mm. And did you see that? I mean, you saw that at the internship or in the
actual job at that point.
Actual job. Yeah. But then the Cheesecake Factory, you saw that there?
Yeah. So I was like Clark Kent. So by day, I would be at Marcus and Millichap making the calls, and about 5 o'clock would roll around, 6 o'clock, and I'd jam over. Yeah. And I'd take my glasses off, if you will, same tie, and I'd work Cheesecake Factory. And I was kind of, in a sense, I was just staying under the radar. So I'd work, like 3, 4, 5 nights a week or nights and weekends because weekends were off for commercial real estate.
Yeah. But at Cheesecake Factory, did you notice that like the people that were coming in there, like, did you notice anything there or just more in the real estate side?
There was one time there was actually a client I was going for like a $3 million listing, and I saw him in the other room. I'm like, oh my gosh, if the guy sees me, I'm never going to win his business to sell real estate if I'm selling Cheesecake.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that there's some moments like that, but most of the time I flew under the radar. So nobody, I kept these two sides of my world separate.
Okay.
And even in my mind, it's like I don't want to tell anyone there. Yep. And I don't want to really tell anyone there. Yep. I just want to keep it separate. Although the manager should say, hey, you're overqualified. Why are you getting a Cheesecake Factory job? I said, well, maybe not. I'm not making any money over there, but I'll give you 2 years no matter what. He says, if you give me 2 years, I'll hire you. You'll be there. And I was able to do that for 2 years. I committed. I was there. But the next, those are the 2 years. And, as you know, pain plus reflection equals progress. This is by Ray Dalio. You may have heard that quote before. During this 2 years of reflection about what happened in the 08 crash, we were to figure out that the 1031 exchange wasn't our friend, right? And that's part of what they're saying on the back of the shirt. Friends don't let friends overpay in a 1031 exchange. because clients, friends, and family lost because they were overpaying. And the concept of a 1031 is you sell a real estate asset and you trade it into a like-kind real estate asset within the short period of time.
Yeah.
But guess what? If you're selling high and you're buying higher 180 days later with equal or greater debt, you can be in a compromised position. The idea is to sell high and buy low. But if you have to do it in a short time frame, that's what creates the pressure.
Okay. Explain. Just I want to make sure I'm understanding that, because I know this much about real estate. Okay, I understand why people are attracted to real estate, and then I bought a couple houses, and I was like, "Ew, I'm gonna just go make money in my business, and I'll worry about that later." Right? So 1031 says, I knew it had to be in a time where 180 days.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yes.
But explain the concept of high versus low.
Yeah. And so real estate generally takes longer. It's like the Titanic to move in values. And we're even seeing it right now as we're recording this in mid 2024, right? Yep. We saw the stock market, especially I think COVID is a good example, right? Stock market goes like this big crash and then it kind of comes up actually pretty quick after a few months.
Yep.
Real estate itself is a slower Titanic that takes to move. And in fact, it took 3 years from the 2008 crash to see the bottom of the 2011 real estate market and values. 3 years. Well, if you have 45 days to identify, it's even worse than 180 days. You have 100 days to close. You really have to choose a property within 45 days, okay? So you close an asset, you have to identify typically 3 properties. Well, guess what the seller knows too if you're in a 1031 exchange? He's got you right where he wants you, right? It's hard to negotiate when the other person knows that you must buy, and if you don't, or you're going to pay tax, and the tax is somewhere between 25 to 50% of the gain. Right. So I'll give you an actual case study on this. There's a gentleman named Steve. We sat down with Steve in 2006, early 2007, before everything kind of hit the fan. And we said, Steve, you should sell your assets. And this is before we knew about the Deferred Sales Trust. He goes, I can't. He goes, I have too much debt. I don't have enough liquidity. And if I do a 1031 exchange, I'm going to be overpaying. Like they knew it was the height of the market, but they felt trapped between a rock and a hard place. If I sell, I'm going to double down again. And if I do a 1031, if I don't do a 1031, I'm going to pay the tax. So he goes, I'm just going to try to hold on. But he was over leveraged. Well, fast forward, he lost everything over the next couple of years. He was foreclosed on all the properties, $50 million, lost his primary house, got divorced. Now all of a sudden I'm flashing back to like what my parents went through. It wasn't a financial crisis that caused that, but it was all of a sudden he's separated from his kids. And I'm going, there's got to be a better way than this 1031 exchange.
Right.
So I'm sitting at Marcus and Millichap at the time, learning about this during this journey about what the solution could be.
Oh, okay. So as you're watching people in the 08 or 07, 08, 09 crash, right? And a big portion of this was tax and people not being able to sell, or this guy being over leveraged or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you're watching this from the inside essentially, right? And you're like, oh, this is a really big problem.
Right.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
And the pain of that was collecting with my childhood, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where the passion comes from. And when you see what we're about, or our mission, it's because of that pain of the family being separated because of wealth, right?
Makes sense.
And not being able to just pay simple child support, right? Like that kind of thing. Like, so you start to connect all the dots of like, you live, and then you start to be grateful too, right? I'm totally grateful because my grandma was there. She was like a second parent, like a second mom and a second and like a dad. And you have cousins, you have youth pastors, you have coaches, you have all these people that pour into you, right? Despite not having dad. But if you don't have, but dad, you can't replace dad, right? Dad is dad. Yeah. And when we spent time with dad was amazing, right?
Yep.
But we didn't spend that much time with him, right? And so all of those flashbacks. So I'm sitting at Marcus and Millichap. The market's crashed, right? I'm not making any money. I'm working this side hustle. And I remember like, I'm not like a guy who cries, but I'm sitting in the room like literally like I'm failing. And the failure was like, I'm not making any money, sure. But more so, I'm newly married and the baby's on the way. And I'm thinking, oh no, am I going to fail like my dad? And is wealth going to come in between? Because I'm failing at wealth now. And it's not that like, oh, I want to get a divorce, but all of a sudden it's the fear of like, oh my gosh, like, the whole idea of, either going to break the cycle.
Yep.
Right, of what your parents, right, or or sometimes you can repeat it.
Yeah. And
so that was the fear and the anxiety and the stress, which was like, gosh, there's got to be another way, right? So I remember just praying, thinking, and then, like any, I guess, hero's journey, somebody comes in to teach you something new and tells a better story, or what could have been. And that's when I learned about the Deferred Sales Trust. We're sitting in a room with 30 other agents learning about this. And as he's saying it, I'm going, if this guy is telling what I think he's saying, he's talking about Netflix, and we're all stuck in Blockbuster. Now, at the time, there was no Netflix, but basically, you're saying like you're stuck in something very old that's restrictive, that doesn't provide freedom, flexibility for wealth, that actually puts people in compromised positions. But if we can learn about what he's talking about and apply it, it'll change everything forever.
Okay, I have a question about wealth, You set this up very well. In a very simplified version of investing for most people, right? It seems as though people invest because they have to, right? Because of inflation, but essentially they invest their money into an asset in the hopes that it goes up to create a better future, right? Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Plus time freedom right now.
Right.
So it's got to be both. It's got to be appreciation and it's got to be like actual cash flow now.
Yeah. Well, and I think that would be smart investing. But like even in the simplest form, people are like, hey, I want a better future. I want to secure my future. I want to retire, right? I want to have financial peace.
Yes.
Right. So I'm gonna invest in this thing. And the problem might not be the right word here, but I think you'll get what I'm saying, is that the challenges that you run into when you invest in assets is that most assets that you're going to invest into, you're putting this in, and the risk comes from a variety of different ways, but it's you're locking up your ability to access money, right? When you're putting this into there. And so what you're saying, if I'm simplifying this out, if I'm understanding, is that what most people experienced in the 07, 08, 09 crash, and what a lot of people experience in investing, is they take their money, putting it into an asset with the hopes of a better future. And because who could possibly understand everything that would be going into an asset when you're first getting started? You pick an asset, maybe you do some research, you're in, and now you get constricted by all the limitations and things that go in along with that asset. Yes?
It depends. Okay. So this is the key. And this is a good point you bring up here. In real estate, yes, it's known as an illiquid asset, which typically takes 3, 6, or 12 months to sell, depending on a number of factors that are out of your control, versus liquid assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or cryptocurrency, which you can sell within a couple of days. It's a constant market for it, right? And so a good wealth plan, you're going to have a balance between the two. And the problem with the 1031 exchange is it forces you to be in the illiquid, forever, not diversified,
essentially,
with debt, right? And so you're increasing your debt. And so there's 3 concepts to consider: having a tax flow mindset, a cash flow mindset, and the last one is a debt flow mindset. And then you go, well, how am I going to execute on those 3? Because most either advisors or strategies lock you into one or the other.
Okay,
right?
Yeah. And that's okay. So and I think just make sure real estate illiquid, maybe stocks, bonds, or whatever, more liquid, still having some form of limitations, which would be, listen, it's not like I can, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but like if I sell a stock, I got to pay tax on that stock or taxes on the sale of that stock, right? There's no way to defer that when I'm just buying and selling regular stocks.
There is, and that's what we do, right?
Okay.
And so here's our key strategy, right? And again, we'll kind of bring this together a little bit here.
Okay.
The old 1031 only works for investment real estate. It's it.
Well, but sorry. Let me just finish the thought. I'm almost this. But what I'm saying is the typical mindset when someone goes into it is whatever I put my money into, I have, whether it's real or not, I have perceived limitations, right? I'm either illiquid or I've got to pay tax or whatever.
Right.
And that's how everyone has viewed it, or most people have viewed it for a long period of time.
Yes.
And you're sitting there in that room and this guy's introducing you to this concept and you're like, yo, new rules, right? Now you've basically, for lack of a better term, discovered, found, realized that there is a different path or a different tool that basically provides a new set of rules on the way that people used to be doing things.
Yeah, it breaks the boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah, new rules is a good way to think about it. Breaks the boundaries. Opens up freedom and impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass back to you. Continue on with what this is. Okay.
Yeah, and so the illiquid nature of that, if you think about it, right, and if you're locked into debt, right, and you can't sell it or the values drop so quickly, that's where you get caught, and that's where this gentleman, Steve, got caught and lost $50 million worth of commercial apartment complexes in Sacramento, right? And so the solution is what? Well, you want to get out of debt. The solution is you want to get more liquidity, and the solution is you want to sell high when it makes sense, right? Those are, and you also the last one would be diversification. So what's the strategy, and who's the team to help you get there? And that's the key, right? It's not just the idea, it's the team to execute. Just like if you're building funnels, you're building your business, all the things you're doing, everyone can have the idea, but who's the person who's going to help you execute on that, right? And so that's what I started to learn. I met a gentleman who I think he's like the Steve Jobs or the Elon Musk of tax. In particular, capital gains tax, because tax is very broad. It's 10,000 pages, and we think tax is just huge. Well, what about specific tax codes? Just a couple. We go 10,000 feet deep on IRC 453. It's known as an installment sale. And there's another one too that we go, and these 2 tax strategies and these 2 tax part of the codes allow us to defer capital gains taxes on the sale of any assets. It could be cryptocurrency, it could be a business, it could be real estate, it could be stock, it could be artwork collectibles, it could be an airplane, it could be really anything, okay? Second, it allows us to diversify. We can invest into anything and back and back. It can go into crypto, it can go into businesses, it can go into real estate. Third, It can be diversified with our time dollar cost averaging, right? So we're no longer restricted by a like kind 45, 180 requirement. And that's really the key here, right? Like when you have those three on your side, leverage gets back to the investor side, gets back to the entrepreneur side, because most entrepreneurs want to make an impact with their wealth and they don't want to be restricted and boxed in. And so with the Deferred Sales Trust, you can also partner with the trust to go do your own deals and start your new business. I'll give you an example. We had a client, she worked for Google, and this is a classic W-2.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is trusts, right?
This is trust.
Okay,
yeah.
yep,
It's called a Deferred Sales Trust is the product that we have.
Yep.
Right. And when we execute it. So she had 50,000 of Bitcoin. She bought $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, and then it went to 50 million. Okay. She never sold a single Bitcoin until she met us. And part of it is because we could defer the capital gains tax. We could build the team to execute this.
That would be an expensive bill.
Yeah. And so the expense would be about 1.85 million. She lived in California and she didn't want to move to Puerto Rico. So we like to say we're the capital gains tax exit plan for your cryptocurrency without having to move to Puerto Rico, right? And so she sold, deferred the tax, and used 4 of the 5 million for startup capital for her online, like a Khan Academy type of a product, education for kids, okay, and teenagers. And so that was the impact for her. She could retire from the working from the big Google, right? She could defer her tax, but she could live out her passion with making a difference with the wealth without having to take on VC capital, a debt from somebody else, or having to give ownership of the company.
Yep.
And she could use it from the Bitcoin. Now, guess what? The Bitcoin was at 54,000 a coin when she exited this point. And then it went to 65 and about 68, and then it dropped all the way to 15.
Yeah.
So she got out when it made sense, 54,000 a coin. It all the way dropped back down, right? Now it's back up to about 65 today as we're talking today.
Yeah.
But do you see the idea of sell high, buy low, right? And to unlock what she wanted to do with the capital.
If you can defer the tax, then you can keep. Okay. Why does the trust, I'm sorry, it was a specific type of trust.
It's called a Deferred Sales Trust.
Why does it allow you to do that?
Yeah, so the rule is IRC 453. We'll do a kind of like bridge here to help your audience, right? It's kind of like an IRA. It's kind of like a 401k. Let's start there. Okay. Why do IRAs allow that? Well, the government wants to incentivize us, Josh and Brett, and whoever's listening, to put away for retirement because what? They're not in the business of taking care of everyone who's retired. They would go broke. So they tax incentivize us to do that. Okay. And then when we do that, we naturally save and invest. And then hopefully it grows enough. So at the time we're about 65 or 70, we start taking distributions. We live off of it, right?
Yeah.
It's just the rules, right? So we know those rules because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of companies that are out there telling us about the IRAs and the 401ks. Really simple. Also, there's about 5,000 qualified intermediaries that tell us about the 1031 exchange, right? So those are just the rules. Now, this particular one, there's not people that are set to help people, entrepreneurs like us, or people who own multiple millions of cryptocurrency or real estate to do particular deferred sales trust. Like we're just a very niche product. We use IRC 453, which basically states that if you sell something on an installment sale, meaning you become the bank for the buyer, you're allowed to defer the tax, okay, until you receive payment. So we'll give an example. We're sitting here in Cancun at this gorgeous resort. Let's just say it's worth 20 million, 50 million bucks, 100 million bucks. I don't know, right? And you owned it all the way. Okay. Now let's imagine it was actually in Florida because we use capital gains tax for US.
Okay. So on a $100 million resort in Florida.
Yeah, it's actually California because it's a little bit heavier on tax,
cool.
right?
Okay.
So if you were to sell it for 100 million bucks and you fully depreciate it, the whole thing over a period of years, and by the way, depreciation is another part of the wealth game that we can talk about. But your gain is going to be $100 million. Okay. So 37% of that is about $37 million is the tax if
that's
you
how
sell.
That works.
Yeah.
So if I depreciate the value, then when I sell, I pay
captured.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Shows how much I know about money. Yeah. Holy cow. It's a good thing I stay in my lane. Okay. Glad there's smart people like you. Continue.
Yeah. And so we want to solve for that. And by the way, it's probably even more than that because you might have depreciation recapture as well. And so it could be up to 40%, 45%. If you did an S Corp or a C Corp, and some of us run businesses with S Corps and C Corps, it's even higher. You get a lot of tax incentives up front, but it catches up with you if you sell. Right. And so that it's knowing what, how to structure things, how to set things, but also how to exit things. And so upon the sale, instead of just selling and getting $100 million in your personal account, which would trigger all the tax all at once, in this scenario, say $37 million, you're going to sell it to a trust first for $100 million, but you're going to sell it on an installment. You're going to be like, I don't want any cash at closing. I want to 100% finance the trust. And the trust will write you, say, an interest rate of 5 to 9% on that note. Okay. And the buyer over there has the $100 million. He's the third party buyer. Okay. So it goes, it's 3 steps. You sell it to the trust turns around and sells it to the buyer. Okay. Now watch this, Josh. The trust buys and sells for the same price. So how much gain does the trust have? Zero. Okay. Now, if you carried back paper 100% and you haven't received any payments at closing, how much is triggered today? Zero, right? Now, here's the cool part. You have an extra 37 million working for you and your family, okay, for as long as you want, okay, A. B, it's earning interest. We're going to invest it in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cryptocurrency, your other business ventures, real estate. We're going to diversify it. And that interest that's going to accrue, that's going to be your cash flow that you can live off of. Now, you'll pay tax on that.
Yeah.
But would you like to have basically 60 million or would you like to have 100 million, Josh?
I'd like to have 100 million.
Okay. Well, that's the plan.
And you, it's not own the trust, it's control the trust?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So what are the three biggest objections? We can walk through it, right? And one of them is controls, right? By the way, you don't own the IRA company you put the money in. You don't own the 401k company you put it in, right? You work with third-party groups that own an administrator, right? Now you own the account that's there. And this scenario, since you sold it to the trust, you don't own the trust, but the trust owes you back the money. But here's some of the controls we put in place, right? A, we have third-party financial advisors at places like third-party Charles Schwab.
Sorry. Yeah. Is this your trust?
So it's not my trust,
but you're not setting. This is not something I come to you and you set it up for me and then hand it over and then hunky dory, we're good, right? This is like there's involvement of you.
So let's talk about our company. So we're the third-party unrelated trustee. There's a couple roles that fit here. We're kind of like a third-party qualified intermediary when you do a 1031 exchange, or a third-party IRA custodian. Right. Okay. So there's a couple groups. So we're the third party unrelated trustee. So by trade, my actual role is a deferred sales trust trustee.
Okay.
So I'm a trustee for the specific trust, and this is what we set up.
Got it.
And then my business partner is a tax attorney. He does all the tax and legal work. He represents you for IRS audit defense. He's the genius behind all of this. He's also a CPA.
Yep.
And so the funds never move without your approval or your signature. So that's very important. But if you own the trust, Josh, you just sold it to yourself. It's taxable.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So what I remind people is the $100 million is not all yours. 37% of that is the government's.
Yeah.
But the government's giving you an interest-free loan at 0%. So when do you want to you want to give up some control and have an extra 37 million working for you and your family, starting your next business, buying your next real estate property, living off the cash flow?
Yeah.
He just says give up some control.
Yeah.
Right. And now what do those controls look like? Well,
yeah.
You nothing moves out your approval or your signature. You have all the legal rights of a bank. So what does a bank do? Well, a bank loans money to people, right? And you might have a house, Josh, and they may have a mortgage on it. Are they concerned that if you don't make the payment that they can't foreclose on you and take the asset? No. So that's exactly what you become. You become the bank and you lend the money to the trust. If the trust doesn't perform or pay you, guess what? You foreclose, you take your money back. You pay your tax when you do that. Right? Now, we work with some of the best financial advisors in the world, literally. Some of the best commercial real estate operators in the world.
The reason you can take back the money is because it's just sitting in the trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate the law and I love it so much. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, got it.
Yeah, we need to sell the assets. And the collateral will be the different assets, right?
I understand. Yeah.
But you can also kind of do like a self-directed IRA. And this is the best part where people, once they click, they go, oh my gosh, so you're telling me I could defer all the tax, then I could turn around and I can partner with the trust, and you open up an LLC, a new LLC, and you want to say start a brand new company or buy an apartment complex or whatever, something. It has to be investment. You want to do an Airbnb on the beach, right? Yeah. The trust can be the silent partner that puts up the capital, and you're running that deal.
Got it. Yep.
So there's it's a team. We're building a team here. Yep. I'm a friendly trustee.
Yep.
Right. I do have to approve of the investments, but my odds of me saying no to you are 1 in a million. Right. Now that's some of the controls you have to give up. Now, so that's really the biggest one. Once you get to know, like, and trust me, our clients, our process, our procedures, and realize that it's kind of like an IRA and a 1031 and stuff that you've already given up control on. It's just a little bit different because it's not direct ownership. It's a lendership is the way I call it.
Yep.
And the next one would be legality, right? Like people go, wow, Brett, like I'm a really hard driving entrepreneur, real estate person. I'm worth, hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars or $1 million. Like I have really smart CPAs. Like, why haven't I heard about it? Like, why isn't everybody doing this? Right. Yep. This is the most common questions.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, and maybe this is what you're covering here.
Yeah.
When does it make sense for someone to look like, who does this make sense for?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's do the minimums and then we'll work our way up, right? So the minimum is $1 million net proceeds and $1 million gain. Okay. So per transaction. So if you're selling a business for $1 million and you had a zero basis, right? Which, by the way, a lot of the online, tech companies, they have really next to no basis and they they go through the roof, right?
Yeah.
And so they have all of it as gain. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now you can sell multiple assets into the trust to consolidate. You might have, $1 million of crypto, $1 million business, a $4 million apartment complex, and you can start to exit each of those assets and consolidate that equity, which is also a nice way. And you get multiple promissory notes. Okay. So one trust, multiple promissory notes. So that's when it makes the most sense. We do about 60% of all of our deals are real estate. About 30% are business sales, and the other 10% are like miscellaneous. So it'd be stock or cryptocurrency. Although we do believe now that Bitcoin has hit about 65,000 a coin, we're going to see an influx of a lot of people who want to exit that because they don't want to suffer the $15,000 drop again. Not that we think it's going to go that low. Who knows, right? I'm not a Bitcoin expert in that scenario, but we are experts on helping you to exit that, defer the tax, and diversify the wealth.
Got it.
So is that answer some of the questions there so far?
100%. So if somebody, actually, let me finish we'll finish this thought because I do have a question. At what point, like if I own real estate, right? Does this only make sense for me to set up the trust when I'm getting ready to sell?
Great question. So first of all, we work on a conditional basis, right? Never too early to plan.
Right.
Never too early to build your capital gains tax exit plan.
Right.
Where do most people find us? They find us 30, 60, 90 days before they're closing. Because all of a sudden they're doing their underwriting with their CPA and they're going, oh my gosh, if I don't do something, the government's going to take, I'm going to owe all this money. And so that's when they find us. But ideally, they buy the book now, they get on the YouTube channel, they get on the podcast.
Which is, link it below.
The
book.
Like, the book's called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. I think this is a good point. Josh, you might build for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 5, 10, 20, 50, $100 million company. But if you don't spend 5 hours building a capital gains tax exit plan, 25 to 50% of the proceeds at closing are gone forever. And so that's the key here. Like we need to set it up prior to the close of escrow. We typically even need to set it up, ideally, even prior to going into contracts. Okay. Now the technical thing is the buyer cannot have removed all contingencies. So if you're under contract, we still have time. We've done deals in 10 days, 15 days, 21 days. But the larger the deal, the more the players are in there. And this is the key. It's sort of like if you heard of the concept of YouTube videos, like you want to do your thumbnail and maybe your title first before you actually do the video. This concept is really important. You want to build your capital gains tax exit plan before you're in the heated negotiation of selling your company, right? You want to build the land where you're going to land. Otherwise, you're taking off the plane and boom, you're going to get hit with that tax. And so we want to build it now, get it in place, have it as an option for you to use. Because you don't just sell it to the trust and hang out and hope for a buyer. We actually have like a simultaneous close, right? And so we take all that pressure off. We only get paid at closing, so we take that pressure off. But we're confident in what we do, but we need to be there early for the IRS purposes. But also, because if you close and you take it into your personal account, it's over. Right? Unless you use the best 1031 exit plan, which we have, which gives you, if you're doing a regular investment real estate property, we can go into that best 1031 exit plan, which gives you an option for a regular 1031 exchange or a deferred sales trust.
Okay. So, next question on this would be this, by the way, fascinating. One more time. What was the book name?
Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan.
Okay. We're going to link that down below. We'll link all your stuff down below with this. But, okay. So one of the things that I've learned in the past, let's say year and a half or so, as I've been studying money and realizing, business and money are two way different things, right? Like, wow, interesting is, I'm going to use your real estate for the example, right? There's real estate as an investment. There's real estate as a business, right? Most people, they're like, I'm going to do Airbnb investment. It's like, no, that's an Airbnb business, right? Like, cause if you're active and involved in it, does this work in both categories, just business versus real estate, or is there a different strategy or different play here, depending upon how you're doing it?
It's a great question. It's the most important question. It's actually the foundation of why I started the company. So you can be passive or active. You can be retired or entrepreneur, right? The flexibility, we're the most flexible, proven legal capital gains tax exit strategy that you never heard of, right? By the way, quickly, 27-year track record, thousands of closes, billions and billions and billions of assets, gross assets sold over the years, and over 29 no-change IRS audits. Really, really important, right? Okay, so we have a perfect legal track record, and we're batting 1,000. We have third-party validation with law firms, with financial advisors across the whole country. We work with some of the best in the world. Okay.
Wow.
And I can tell you more about that if we want to go down the legal route. But let's assume it's all legal. It works every single time. There's lifetime audit defense. And so the ability to be an entrepreneur is so important, right? A lot of the other strategies, they're like, hey, Josh, sell your stuff and we'll take care of you from here out and just go retire or go live on the beach. And we're like, no, we want to go start the next thing. We want to go build. We want to go control our destiny with the wealth. The Deferred Sales Trust lets you be that active investor. And it's even better that when you partner with the trust, you're not capped at just the 8 or 9% on the promissory note. In fact, this is sometimes the objection. They go, well, if I sell for, let's just use 10 million to make it simple. If I sell for 10 million, I could defer the 4. But Brett, if I'm only making 6, 7, 8, or 9%, like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a guy who took it from 0 to 10 million. I don't want to be capped, or you're not capped. You can partner with the trust and you can go make 150%, 50 or 100%, whatever you're making, and you can get the majority of the upside. So that's why I said lendership before.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So let's break that down even more so for everyone listening, right?
Yep.
So if you and I want to start a company today, okay, and we would form what's called an LLC, and we make it a partnership LLC. Let's say we did 50-50. Now, I might be the person who puts up all the money, and you might do all the operations, right? The expertise. And so I might sign on the debt, right? But you're gonna do the active ownership of it. I might do some stuff on the side, but on that scenario, you're gonna get 50% ownership, and you put no money in. I'm gonna get 50%. I put all of the money up front, right? And we're gonna grow the company together. Okay. So think of that like the trust, but the difference is we do an 80-20. Okay. We give Josh 80% ownership. Okay. Josh puts up no money. The trust puts up all of the money as a silent joint venture partner. Okay. It asks for a preferred return, and the preferred return typically mirrors the note, which is basically a wash from you. So it's kind of like you borrowed from the trust, but you didn't borrow. Because if you borrowed, it'd be taxable, Josh, and we don't want to do that. Okay.
Wait, why would it be taxable?
Because that's the rule. Okay. That's the rule.
Wait, so because normally if you borrow, like normally from any other thing, debt is not taxable.
Correct.
Borrowing from a trust, it is taxable.
Yeah, borrowing from an installment sale with a trust, the way we structure it, it's taxable because the government doesn't want you to basically risk their let's keep it simpler, 3.7 million on 10 million. They're saying, look, we'll let you defer that, Josh. But if you go try to leverage against this and go try to, margin and it crashes, we're not getting paid. So they go, you cannot do that. That's going to be immediately taxable. But you can joint venture partner with it. Okay. And so that's how we're going to structure it. Now we're going to give you an option to purchase even 98% of the upside. So you can also, so if you take the company from 10 million, let's say you had 10 million in the trust, and let's just say you put 4 million into a new deal, and that turns into 40 million over like 5 or 6 years or something. You blow it, right? Blow it up. You pay back the original 4 to the trust, which owes you the money anyways, plus a preferred return, which owes you that money anyways on the interest rate. But the excess, you can get 98% of the upside, okay?
Oh, the trust can?
You can.
I can get...
Yeah.
Me as the...
because you're the operator. You're operating the business. You're running it as an entrepreneur, right? So you're using what you would have paid to the government in this scenario, about $4 million, to fund your deal, okay? To make it really big and create a whole nother windfall of wealth. And so this is why we think it's the best kept, not only secret for capital gains tax deferral, but for wealth building. It becomes a wealth building machine.
Because you're sorry, this question's been bugging me because I think, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. You defer forever, and then you die. What happens to it?
Okay, you pass it to your kids. So your kids can step into your shoes, and they can continue the deferral on one of the strategies. The second one, the kids can be the beneficiaries of the trust, and it's outside your taxable estate, and it passes as state tax and capital gains tax free. We can get into the why you do that one versus this other one. There's 2 of them. There's 1.0 and 2.0. So that's a whole nother thing we can talk about here. Yeah.
The deferred tax gets paid.
As you receive payments. When do you pay tax? Okay, this is a great question. Okay. When you see personal payments, you pay tax. So let me give you a couple scenarios of how we structure this. Okay. This is important. Let's say it's a $10 million promissory note, and we structure it at 8%. It's $800,000 per year, right? If you
from the trust.
The trust is earning it, okay? There's 2 ways it could happen. So the trust can let it compound on top of itself. And in that scenario, there's no tax at the trust level. There's no tax at your level because no one's received it. And the trust is able to expense what it earns on the interest rate, okay? Getting a little technical here, but stay with me.
I'm with you.
As it pays you, if it pays you, you pay tax. Now, you might do partial interest payments starting in year 2. So for 2 years, you might have 10 million earning 8%. You let it compound, no tax. The next year you do it again, no tax. Year 3, you're starting some payment, but you might say, I only want or need 250,000. So now you're taking a partial 250, the other 800 still due, plus the other 10 million, plus whatever else accrues. And you'll pay tax on that 250. You might want it to be 400 or 800.
But the deferred tax that you put into the trust,
the equity, the capital,
that's being paid on the way out, is what you're saying.
Only when you receive it.
Only when you receive it. So if you die, and now that trust the beneficiary, when they pull money out, it gets paid.
So there's 2.0 and 1.0. Okay, this is a good time to jump into it. Okay, so on a 1.0, they can step into your shoes. So we'll use the $10 million mark again. Let's say you would have paid 40% tax, and you've been living off of $400,000 to $800,000 over your lifetime, right? And you're like, this is sweet. I had an extra $4 million working for me. I was able to do my business ventures, all this different thing, and then you die. Okay, and if you're married, your spouse steps into your shoes and she continues the payments, right? If you're not married, and your children can be the beneficiaries of your big living trust that has the promissory note asset. That's your asset inside of that. And they step into your shoes and they start receiving the payments. Now, if they say, okay, let's let the promissory note just accrue, the balloon payments due. We do it in 10-year increments, by the way. So every 10 years, you can renew for 10 years. You can also do a 5-year or 3-year. The balloon payments coming due, they can just pay their tax at that point. Or they can say, you know what? I kind of like what mom and dad did. I like to just keep it working for us, right? Which is what probably most will do. If there's 2 kids, they can split the payment. Okay, so that's a 1.0. They can step into the shoes and they can keep it going and pass it to their kids. Any questions on 1.0?
I got you.
Okay, now so about 2.0. 2.0, the children receive it. The trust, they receive all of what's remaining in the trust after you and your spouse dies, if you're married. Capital gains tax-free and estate tax-free. Now you might say, well, Brett, why don't you always do the 2.0, right? The reason is because it's less flexible while you're alive. So while mom and dad are alive, they have to take payments. And as they take payments, it's a fixed amount based upon your life expectancy and your wife's, if you're married, wife's life expectancy. And it's interest and principal.
Oh, you have to take principal.
You have to take principal. So you're paying cap gains and ordinary. This one you can just take ordinary, just interest, right? Not principal. And once it comes out, it's like a water faucet. Like you just turn it on and it's just going to keep pouring out your whole life.
You can't turn it off.
And you can't turn it off. And if you live, past a certain time, it's just going to deplete the whole trust and there's nothing to pass to the kids.
Got it.
Okay. The other one, you can kind of really dial in and be like, I want 250 this year. And we might amend the promissory next year to go 500.
Yeah.
It's a flexible one. So sometimes we're doing 2 trusts. It just depends on the client's net worth. But the key on the second one, like, if Russell Brunson ever watches this podcast, if he exits for $1 billion or $10 billion, right? Just think about this for a second, right?
Yeah.
And I think his dad's a CPA and he's really smart and maybe he has some really cool thing that we should geek out about, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, let's say he exits for $10 billion, right? ClickFunnels. Well, without any charity, life insurance, or gifting required, we can eliminate that $10 billion out of his taxable estate. Now, what's at stake here? At stake here is 40% of that $10 billion, basically, because the exemption amounts are about $6 million per person as of 2026. It might be $7 million, or it can be determined. He's married, so like 12 to 14 million would be exempt, but everything else is subject to a 40% debt tax. Now, watch, let me put this thing together here, right?
$4 billion.
Yeah. $4 billion essentially would be gone forever, right? And guess how efficiently the government's going to spend? That's a whole other episode, right? But what's happening in the next 18 years is what we call the reverse Tea Party, Josh. I want you to capture this, right? Because it's so important. A lot of what's happening in the political world, we're fighting on a lot of stuff, right? And a lot of it has to do with freedom, with rights, with where and how money is spent and taxes and such. In fact, remember 240 years ago when we studied in high school and in junior high, it was the Tea Party, right?
Yep.
And they basically said, look, you're taxing us too much without enough
2% or 4%
rights or freedom, whatever it was, right?
Without representation.
So we fought. And now this American experiment's gone 240 years later. And guess what? As far as we know, America and basically the baby boomers have amassed the largest amount of wealth in the history of the planet.
Yep.
And guess what's happening in the next 18 years? Well, they're dying, okay? And they're passing it on to the next generation, okay? Which is mostly the millennials, okay? So this is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you a couple other stats. There's about 80 million baby boomers in the U.S. alone, and every day about 10,000 are turning 65, okay? So there's this massive just tsunami of wealth. Now, 50% of all the wealth in America is tied to 3 assets: high-end primary homes, private equity, which is businesses, and commercial real estate. Okay,
commercial real estate.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Now, these 3 are the most highly appreciated assets, right? Maybe in the history of the planet, right? It's massive, okay? Now,
80%?
50% of all wealth in America, 50% of all wealth in America are those 3 assets, okay? And the majority is owned by baby boomers. And of that, they're all hyper appreciated. Now, what do baby boomers want to do right now? Well, they want a legacy plan, but they also want freedom for their family and their time, right? Like the millions are not what they're trying to earn anymore. The time is what's crucial, right? So they want freedom, they want impact with their wealth. And so, but guess what? If they don't have a plan for this, what's going to happen? the government's going to get a hold of a lot of this through the government estate tax or the capital gains tax. And guess what happens when the government has all the money? They have all the power.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the scary part. And so we're in what's called the reverse Tea Party right now, where our mission and our value is to unlock capital gains tax to multiply freedom and impact. And if we can help the wealthiest in the world, now it's their choice to give to charity or not. It's totally up to them. But it's also their choice to be entrepreneurs or pass it on to other entrepreneurs who are going to build actual jobs, because we're never going to tax our way out of our 35 trillion. We're only going to grow and expand and create more jobs through entrepreneurs like us, right? And everyone who's watching this to ultimately create more tax revenue, which is why the government actually allows these things. That's why the U.S. has been so prosperous, because we've had actually for the most of the history of the U.S., we've had a really good incentivized tax system that promotes real estate ownership, promotes real estate building, promotes entrepreneurship. And so bringing this all together, without any charity, life insurance, or gifting required, which is the church, what I call those blockbuster methods. Those are like CRUTs and CRATs and NINGs and DINGs and CRTs and 1031 exchanges. Those all have their place.
Yes.
But they don't do what the Deferred Sales Trust can do. This is Netflix. And so in one day, in one sale, we can eliminate all of the estate tax, no charity, no life insurance, and no gifting required. The children can be the beneficiaries, and it's forever outside the taxable estate. So let's bring it full circle. 10 billion sells. Now, and let's say someone like Russell lives for another 50 years. That 10 billion turns into, I don't know, $1 trillion. Who knows, right? That's all outside the taxable estate. Okay. And guess how much good that can do if, assuming, I imagine the legacy with the children, right? They can do so much good to help so many people, right? But they don't force the charity. That's the key. They're not forcing the charity. It's out of what, you can hold people accountable, right? You can have transparency with the wealth. In fact, that's what David Green is doing. David Green with his family, multi-billionaire with Hobby Lobby. I spent a couple of days with David and his team and a number of 150 Christian leaders at Hobby Lobby headquarters a couple of weeks ago. And what's remarkable about that, he talks about stewardship versus ownership. And this is kind of bringing the wealth circle thing here together. And it's the idea of stewardship, that we've been given these gifts, and these gifts aren't ours to own, they're ours to steward. And that's everything. That's not only the wealth that we've earned, but it's also the gifts of talents that we've been given, right? So if we can be a steward with that versus have an ownership mentality, we move from a mindset of entitlement to a mindset of gratitude. And when we're in a mindset of gratitude, you're more likely to give. Right, you're more likely to make an impact. You're more likely to get outside of yourself, right? And so that's the battle that we're in, and it's massive, and we're on the front lines, brother.
Why does the government allow this to be a thing? Because there's got to be a reason, right? They're not dumb.
Well,
so, I mean, they're pretty dumb, but powers that be aren't dumb.
So let's talk about the study of macroeconomics a little bit, right? The study of macroeconomics and just American freedoms. Backing up to the Great Depression, what happened? Like, if you study that, part of what happened was banks seized up. And everything kind of stopped, and it was like brutal, right? And so during that time, this is actually the Installment Sale IRC 453. This is where it was kind of like perfected and like created. Okay, so it's almost 100 years old. Okay, and they basically said like they need to incentivize Josh and Brett and anyone who's listening to be the bank for the sale of real estate or businesses. They can't rely on the bank to finance it. They can't force Josh to sell his business at $10 or $100 million or his real estate. And guess what? If Josh knows if he sells it, he's going to be taxed, he's probably not going to sell it. But if they can incentivize him to be the bank, and guess what? I could buy that company for $50 million. I might take it to $500 million, and that creates more jobs, creates more tax revenue. So the government's the number one winner here. Don't get that crossed, right? They're the number one winner. So they can only incentivize through tax incentives for us to go into retirement, into IRAs, and to actually even build real estate. They give depreciation. Like, why do you want to be a developer? Well, it's hard work. It's a lot of risk. It's like, the land, all of that stuff. Well, if I can get tax upside but if I can get tax incentives along the way, it encourages you to do it. This is part of why they go, why do the rich just get richer? And why do they give all these tax incentives for real estate? Well, it's because if they didn't, no one would have any houses. Government's not going to be very effective at building houses. They just aren't.
Somebody explained, or it was Brad actually. He explained, he said the tax code is whatever, 10,000 pages long. It was like 10 pages of it tells you how much taxes you got to pay. There are 9,908 or 90 of them tell you how not to pay it. It's fascinating.
Exactly. It's fascinating. They're going to incentivize through tax incentives to do certain things. And so you see like, green initiatives and solar initiatives and all of these different things. they can incentivize, they can't force, right?
Yep.
Because what happens when you force? That's communism,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
we want liberty and freedom.
Okay. How old are you?
40. I'll be 41 in about 5 days.
Okay. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So you're 10 years old now. I just turned 30. So I want to get your perspective on Bitcoin, but from a different perspective, from a purely an asset perspective, not a technology perspective, right?
Yeah.
For a second. So imagine I own an asset. Don't think Bitcoin for a second, but let's take a piece of real estate and I own it 100% outright. I have no debt on it. It's worth $10 million, whatever, and it's going to go up.
Yep.
Unless I needed the full $10 million, right? I can borrow against it or whatever. Why would I ever sell that asset?
Yeah. It's like Bitcoin. This is a great example, right? Bitcoin went from, 65 to about 68,000 and dropped to 15,000, right?
Well, not even Bitcoin, but just real estate, but the principle for a second. Like,
Okay.
would there be any reason if Josh owns a piece of real estate for $10 million, I'm 30 years old, I'm like, yo, it's 100% owned. If I ever needed the money, I just go borrow against it, 20% of it, get my money, do my thing, and pay it back whenever, right?
Yeah.
Like this, is there any reason I would ever sell that? Or I could just pass it on from generation to generation unless I didn't like the asset for some reason, right?
Yeah.
Like this, is there any reason for me to not sell it?
It all depends,
Or
right?
for me to sell it, yeah.
It all depends. So you can start with the global, like what's your total net worth, Josh, right? Are you above the exemption amounts? And if you don't sell it and it's still inside of your taxable estate, while you die, you're going to have to sell it anyways. In fact, have you seen the show Yellowstone?
I'm not, no.
Okay, I'll just tell the quick concept, right? There's basically
I understand. the
Kevin
concept. Yeah,
Costner, Montana land worth a couple $100 million, whatever the land is. And everyone's trying to kill Kevin to get the land.
Yep.
It's basically the whole concept.
Yeah.
Now you have Beth, the daughter, who's the attorney, who's really smart. And she's like, and next, actually, I don't know what season it is, maybe season 2 or 3. They're like, Dad, if you don't sell the land and they kill you, they're going to take it anyways with death tax. And so every time I'm watching that episode, I'm yelling, Kevin, sell the land. Use a DST. You can eliminate the death tax. Okay. So you realize that the government's biggest mousetrap is that death tax. Okay. And if he doesn't sell it during his lifetime and he dies, his estate gets assessed immediately. And they're gonna force the sale from the family because they got to pay 40% above the exemption amounts.
Okay. So if I hold a piece of real estate and let's say it's worth $50 million when I die, and it's just me personally, I personally own it, the government takes their big, massive cut of it.
Forces you to sell anyways, probably, or force you to take on all this debt, your family, or a bunch of life insurance, or you have to pay for it.
Right, because I've got to pay the death tax, right? All right, so now let's transfer over to Bitcoin for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I am, that is my thing. Like I am young, I'm the millennial, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the 50% of all of it, of all wealth is in 3 assets, right? Commercial real estate, high-end luxury homes, and what was the other one?
And it was private equity businesses.
Private equity, okay? So you take a bunch of millennials and they go, ugh, ew, commercial real estate. They go hard, because we don't like to work.
Sure.
I do, but whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then you go high-end luxury homes. That's kind of not cool anymore. I mean, it's a totally different generation, right? And then businesses, I mean, perhaps that one would stay, right?
Yeah.
But there's this shifting of wealth, right? And millennials are going to inherit some stuff. They're going to make some money or whatever. All of a sudden, things start to change. Now, whether or not it goes into Bitcoin, that's a complete hypothetical. But my point here is you have people like me who go, screw it, it's too much. I'm just going to go put it in an asset. And my plan with Bitcoin, never sell. Like you go ask my wife right now, if I die, what's the number one rule? Without question, I bet my life on the fact, she would look at you and go, never sell the Bitcoin, right? Like that's rule number 1, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at this and I go, cool, because I'm just going to go up forever. I truly believe it's going to go up forever.
Yeah.
All this money's going to flow into this.
Yep.
And my question was, I think you just answered it. My question to you was, why the heck would I need a trust? I'm never planning on selling, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, Josh, while you're alive, you don't need a trust until the day you die, and then your family's screwed.
So that's the first thing on the estate tax. But let me give you some more context on that, right? So I would ask you, like, Josh, like, what is your wealth plan? What is your vision for your wealth? What's your vision for your impact? What's your vision for working with your kids? Like a lot of people, the reason they would sell the Bitcoin is to fund that next business venture with their children, to teach them entrepreneurship, to teach them values. So like when you I don't know if you have kids.
I would just borrow against it. I have a 6-month-old, but yep.
Right. And so let's look at the borrow against it, right? So it goes from 65,000 a coin to 15,000 a coin.
Yep.
Right. And there's a margin call, and now you lost it. Right. You had to pay back. Right. This is what happened to people. The second thing, people put it into, FTX. They put it into these shady crypto, currency places, and they lost it anyways. Yep. Right. And so what I would say to you is, Josh, and you'd say, well, I have a hard wallet, all those things. I get all that. Right. But I would say, look, do you have a clear vision for what the wealth could do for you if you had it right now? A, and B, by the way, I love your strategy. Let's just enhance it. Let's
That's
buy it when it drops. Like you can still go 100% back into Bitcoin. So you could sell at, like right now we're at 65,000, 66, I think today, right? You could sell it. And by the way, the last month and a half, 2 months, it fluctuated from about 50, 52, 54 to 70, 73, right?
Yeah.
There's been this arbitrage play here too, right? Yeah. And so I might say to you, Josh, hey, sell 5 million of it if you feel like there's an opportunity to do something that's going to be meaningful for you, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
That may be starting another company. Yeah. You might say, well, I can borrow against it. Well, then you're taking on risk, right? Because if it drops, you're going to have to pay it back. You're going to have a margin call, right? So you can capture that value. The second part is I think Bitcoin does this a lot, right? And who knows how much longer this bull run's going to be, where it's going to be. We don't really know.
Yep.
But if I could tell you, Josh, we could put you in 10%, cash flow on, let's say you did 5 million right now, right? And we just do 10% on that. And let's say our goal is to buy it back if it dips below 55,000 a coin or 52 a coin or whatever it is, right? And you can dollar cost average and buy back in. And let's say then you don't even sell that tranche until it hits 80, 85 a coin, right? Like there's ways to make sense of this where you could do both. Okay. You don't have to just suffer. I mean, you're at 65,000 a coin. At one point, maybe you're at 15, right? What if you would have sold everything and met me a couple of years ago it's 68,000. I think that was the peak.
Yeah.
What would we have done? We would have sold all of it. We would have put it in the Deferred Sales Trust and we would have waited until when? Until you felt pretty good. It might have been at 20 or 25 or 15. Who knows?
Yep.
You would have perhaps dollar cost average. And then where would you be? You'd be doubled your money.
Yep. So is there, let's pretend, so I'm going to use me for an example because I'm probably the simplest of anyone because I've just been like, I just like business and like investing and the future. I'm just like, my wealth plan is make so much ridiculous money in business like Russell that like, I never even need to worry about that. I understand that there needs to be more into that and I have thought further than just that, but essentially my plan is this in a nutshell.
But pause. Can I say this real fast?
Yeah.
Because here's the key, right? You make all this ridiculous money over here. If you have no tax flow depreciation offset it, which Bitcoin does not offer you depreciation. If you have no tax flow depreciation, which the best way to do that we found is real estate. Okay. Then you're just paying massive tax. Where do you live?
Denver.
Okay. Which is pretty high
just
tax
outside
state.
of Denver, but Colorado.
Pretty high tax state. I think it's getting higher too.
4% is the income tax.
Yeah. So how much are you paying in tax? We'll knock this out right now. How much are you paying in tax? Like 35, 40% of it?
It's a little bit less than that, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly,
Let's call it 30, 35%.
Yeah, 30,
okay?
35%. Yeah.
So our goal here would be to tax flow your cash flow. And what that means is we're going to offset the cash flow with what's called bonus depreciation cost seg on real estate assets. Are you married or single?
I'm married.
Okay.
Yeah. Married.
You had the baby, right?
Yep,
Saw the baby.
Yep.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah. So cute.
Yeah, I got 4 daughters, so I know what it's like to be a daughter. Daughter girls.
Oh man, yeah, that's awesome.
Also got a baby boy, which is cool. So, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So what I would say, Josh, is I would say, look, and I don't know how much you have in Bitcoin, but let's just say you had 15 million bucks, right?
Okay. Not quite that much, but we're getting there. Yeah.
All right, great.
I like it.
But the point is, I would say, okay, how much tax are you paying per year on? Let's say you're making $1 million over here, and you're paying 300,000 of tax, right? Yeah. So I would say, is there a way to exit when it makes sense for you on the Bitcoin, tranches, defer the tax, buy the real estate to get a $200,000 to $300,000 worth of depreciation? And is your wife married? Is your wife working or is she not working?
She's staying home.
Perfect. Okay, so you're literally in a perfect situation where it's called a real estate professional.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't mean that she has to go get a real estate license.
Doing it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, right? But just some people they hear that and they go, "What it means my wife has to go sell real estate?" No, she's taking care of the kids, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't have to do that.
Primary thing.
You said spend 750 hours in there and you're not working anywhere else, basically, right?
Yep.
So long story short, you start buying real estate to offset the $300,000 of tax every year, and guess what you do with that? You put it right back into Bitcoin. Okay, so we're using real estate to offset your ordinary income tax.
Wait, hold on. But I bought the real estate with what money?
So you sold the Bitcoin, let's say $2 million of it, right? You sold it. I know your number one rule. I'm just giving you the reason for why you do it.
I understand.
You sell it, you defer that tax. You use that money from the trust to buy real estate with you in that joint venture partnership we talked about. You get the majority of the depreciation, okay? And you get the cost seg on that to offset the 300 here, right? And then you're just dollar cost averaging back into Bitcoin because you have all that extra money. And so I'm using cash flow, tax flow, debt flow, right?
Yeah.
We're not over leveraging your Bitcoin to do that, right? Because that could drop and now you have a margin call. So yeah, you are getting a little more conservative on the real estate, but really the play is to get more of all of your active business income to be offset because every dollar basically it's like a guaranteed 30%, right?
Okay, hold on. You just said something right there that it was not worth it to me at this point because I'm like, I'll just whatever the couple $100,000 or whatever is not worth it to me. I'll just leave it in Bitcoin and bet it goes up. I don't care. But you said something there, which is, let's say we've got. I like this $15 million number. Okay, we got $15 million.
Speak into existence.
Yeah. $15 million. It'll be there soon, right? but like, all right. So I've got $15 million in Bitcoin. I'm making $2 million a year in my business in profit. Let's say, right? So I'm making $2 million profit. Now I got to pay taxes, 35% taxes on that. It is probably, I think it's probably 35%.
$700K. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to pay $700,000. What you're saying here is you're saying, hey, Josh, look. If you're got $15 million in Bitcoin over here, you can sell Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin into a trust.
Deferred Sales Trust.
Into this trust. Yep. Then you can use that money to buy real estate, which would then lower your tax benefit or your tax to offset this.
Yeah, the depreciation will offset the cash flow.
Then you can take that money
that you just say the $700,000
and put it
in Bitcoin.
Put it back into the trust to buy back into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I always said that. Okay. All right. Okay. Now I get it. I understand. So this is not literally just because beforehand, what it sounded like you were saying, which is like you're basically it's not trading, but it was like to me it was like trading. We're speculating. Oh, Bitcoin's here, we're gonna sell it. Sure. You're saying no. That's a nice plus, right? But let's pretend Bitcoin stayed fixed even, right? You're literally saying, hey, we can leverage this, still have the Bitcoin play, simply to go because of the tax deferral here, to go and tax defer. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm really glad there's smart people like you. Okay. All right. So to kind of bring this to tie this all together, if you will, okay, you're clearly very smart. You hinted at your credentials and the stuff that you've done, which is impressive.
But can I tell you that? Like I'm actually a really simple real estate entrepreneur guy, like you, like anyone else listening. I just spent the 10,000 hours with the genius. Yeah. If you spent 10,000 hours with Russell since 2009, you'd probably know about 80, 90, 99% of what, and you probably spent maybe 1,000 hours with him at this point, with you being in the inner circle and all that stuff, right? Yeah. Like I just spent 10,000 hours. And by the way, Russell has a business partner named Todd, who's a genius. Yeah. Guess what my business partner is? His name is Todd. Yeah. And he's a genius. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I just spent 10,000 hours with him since 2009, fell in love with what it could do for clients. So I didn't study to be a CPA or tax attorney. I'm a real estate entrepreneur by heart, right? And I love business. I love working on teams. I spent the time with them and I just put the patterns together, how to execute it. That's it.
Yep. Yeah. And you serve a very specific, or you solve a very specific need, right? Which is fantastic, right? So for the entrepreneur, the people that watch this show, the people that are in my network or whatever are usually one of two categories of people, right? There's the first type, which would be, let's call them the beginner. But this is, we try to stay away from actual beginners, but it's like people that they're at the 6-figure level. They're wanting to go to 7 figures, whatever, early entrepreneur stage. They're probably not thinking too much about assets and buying stuff, or maybe, maybe typical investing and whatever, right? But that's not their goal. And then there's the second level of people, which are the multi 7 figures. Maybe they've had an exit or they've made enough profit to where they've got a couple $1,000,000, right? Or have access to more than that or whatever. And they're kind of sitting there, and maybe business isn't their maybe they don't want to be a Russell or an Alex Hormozi where their play is just, I'm going to go make $100 million or $1 billion. And this, like, to that person, right? Like, are they ready to come to you now? Or when is someone ready to have the conversation with you specifically, like, so that they know? Because I think more people need to know that you exist, right? And that this thing is, because this is ridiculous. I mean, this is like when I found out that money wasn't real, right? I was like, wait, money isn't, I was like, it's debt, right? It was like that eye-opening thing of like, oh, the rules just changed in my brain, right? This is all new. And so who is that person that if they're listening right now, you speak to them and be like, this is who I work with. We should actually have a conversation, call them out.
Yeah. So my superpower really is I'm a real estate investment advisor. Okay. I'm a real estate investment advisor. So a lot of people may have financial advisors or even cryptocurrency experts that they follow to help them with their crypto, right? So building a team of experts and in your scenario, I would say, who is that top person that is the crypto or Bitcoin person? Because I know that's a very different thing. By the way, we're going to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. I don't know if you're going to be there. Well, my team member is. I have another commitment, but he'll be there. We bought a whale pass, and any whales out there, we want to meet Dan He'll be at the conference. He'll be wearing one of these shirts, tax flow shirts. Okay. So the point is, you're gonna want an expert there. Think of it like you see the show 300 or the movie 300, right?
Yeah.
And they're all lined up with their shields and they have their spears, and their whole power was they all were unified, and they let anyone get on the side of them, right? And they would move forward and they do the spear, right? So if you're building a family office or you're building a dream team, right, you want the best around your 15, 20, 100 million, $1 billion of wealth, right? And the key is finding those dream team players. And so in your scenario, it would be that Bitcoin amazing expert coach, or however you want to put that. It'd be a real estate investment advisor. Hey, I'm here. Let's go. It'd be that certified financial planner. It'd be that CPA. It'd be that tax attorney. It'd be that top realtor, like, luxury realtor in Denver, right? Or however, person. It would be that commercial real estate, top broker for the properties we're looking to find. It would be, it'd be Russell Brunson, Inner Circle, for helping with the businesses stuff. So you're basically building a dream team around you. And most people they're just so stuck in the silo that they're not building that team, or they have that friend who's that financial advisor, but he's not the Alex Hormozy. He's not the Russell Brunson. He's not the best in the world at what they do.
Questionable at best.
I'm not a huge stock, bonds, mutual funds guy, and neither are I invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum are our main two. We mine some Ethereum with the kids to learn about that, and so it goes back to cash flow, debt flow, tax flow mindset, stewardship over ownership. Right. And the wealth and legacy and having, where there's multiple advisors, there's wisdom. Right. And, but going, and that's even for myself, right? I have coaches, I have people to help me. I have financial planners. So we're building this team. So I would say first is, who is your dream team? Right.
Gotcha.
And have you outgrown your other team? Right?
Wow.
Have you outgrown your other team? Because the same CPA and real estate people that got you from 0 to $1 million, or $1 million to 10 million, or 10 million to $1 billion, like, they're not the same team to get you there. Now, they might be a part of the team. I don't want to say just fire them, right? But you may need to bring some others to help level them up as well, right? And so that's the key. We got to build teams. We got to have a mindset of stewardship over ownership. So that would be the first thing I would say. And then just start planning and asking questions. Be really curious about taxes, even though it's not sexy necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Because that's our second biggest expense. We hear this all the time. The number one is what you don't know. Number two is taxes. And so you've got it. And especially if you blood, sweat, and teared your business or real estate or crypto, and you went through the highs and lows, I mean, you owe it to yourself to be, up to date on this stuff and have a plan.
Yeah. Okay. This is really good. I have one more question about crypto that's a little bit more theoretical, but before we enter that, because that's kind of the last thing that we talk about, is there anything we missed?
I would just say, there's like 10 freedoms. I want to let everyone know how flexible this thing is, right?
Okay,
and we'll jam right through them, right? So sometimes there's a partnership that wants to go a separate way, right? One guy wants to retire, one guy wants to go this way, and it's just, it's ready to separate, right? Yeah. And then the big business sale, a big real estate sale, well, guess what? We can set up a trust for one partner one and the other partner, and they're completely separate. In other words, you don't have to all go together, right? We had a $13 million exit in San Diego. There was 4 partners. One just paid his tax. The other 3 did the trust. He had a small percentage. The other 3 all deferred the tax in separate trusts. Yep. It doesn't mean you can't partner with each other on the next deal, but you're not forcing yourself to stay in the partnership. And the 1031, everyone must go. The second one would be, we can save a failed 1031. Just want to really make sure that everyone understands that. You can go for it. If you find it great, we'll help you with that. But if it fails, we have a backup plan. You can also do a partial 1031 and a partial deferred sales trust. So sometimes it's not a one size fits all, right? You might be charitable with X amount. We can set up a charitable thing for that. And the other amount you want to be with the deferred sales trust, right? So it's not necessarily one size fits all. We talked about estate tax. We can eliminate that. We talked about time freedom, right? You can buy high and sell low. We talked about, running your own deals. You can partner with the trust. So those are some of the freedoms. But the other ones would be debt freedom, diversification freedom, liquidity freedom. Right. So when you start to add any one of these strategy or these freedoms are nice, but when you add all of them up, it's transformational, right? It's transformational, but you got to have the team to execute it, and you get leverage on your side. And that would be just the kind of the last thing I would say I would share.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still like, I know the government wins. I mean, this is good for them too, but it's really interesting that things, because you hear about them, you hear about it, right? It's like, how do the rich stay or do their thing? And fascinating. Okay. Thank you for sharing. One more time, the book.
Building a capital gains tax exit plan. And you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com too to actually find, you can get the book. You can go to Amazon, but you can also just go to the website and then you click on the book.
Okay, cool. Last question. And I don't know how much you know about this. It's a Bitcoin related question. You're at least knowledgeable enough. You know about it. You understand conceptually. You own some, which is more than a lot of people. Play out a scenario with me here, which is we've lived in the world of fake money and fiat systems. Well, I mean, throughout all of history, but in America, we leave the gold standard. We've got all this chaos. We're in a bubble, right? And we don't know if that bubble is a year, 3 more years, or 10 more years, or whatever. At some point, it bursts and it's bad, right? There's a reset of some sort. I have no idea what that looks like, but conceptually, there is some sort of reset. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So Bitcoin is now in the equation, and it's mainstream enough now. I mean, you got the ETFs and things of that nature, and Bitcoin is a finite supply of something, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I am very pro Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin will ever be something that we transact with on a daily basis, right? I think it'll be a reserve currency, a store of value, things of that nature. But when that reset happens, if something like a Bitcoin or Bitcoin comes in and plays a significant role where value is stored, this is going to change the rules of a lot of things. What do you think are things that won't ever change, even if Bitcoin comes in and resets that? Because like in my head, it's like if there's infinite versus finite, that's a totally different game. Like that's crazy, right? An asset that it can't be controlled by, things of that nature, right? And I read a quote by I heard a quote by Jeff Bezos on an interview, and he goes, at Amazon, we ask a question, which is everybody wants to know, like what's going to be changed in 10 years? We ask the question, what's never going to change in 10 years, right? And he gives the example. There will always be low prices. People always want low prices, big selection, and fast free shipping, right? So my question is pretend this whole thing collapses, right? Whatever that looks like. Bitcoin comes in, the rules change, we've got digital currency, whatever. What doesn't change that we still have to figure out how to solve for?
Yeah, so 100% real estate, right? So multifamily housing, people need a place to live. They always need a place to live. And so it's specific to single family houses, apartment complexes, multifamily. We're 4 to 5, maybe 6 million units short in the US alone. Wow. It's the top, housing crisis has never been worse in America. And so attainable workforce housing is part of our passion too, to unlock the capital to make a difference for people to have a house, right? That's affordable, at least attainable, at least close to it. And so it's a hard asset, right? It's an absolute need. And I don't think that's ever going to change. It's known to be inflation resistant because it's just the cost of everything goes up, the construction. So I think real estate, and that's honestly my favorite, and that's where I started, and I'm likewise. I love Bitcoin. And I invest in Bitcoin.
Yep.
And I'm not big on stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, right? I do like private businesses to invest into where I feel like there's more accountability and transparency. Although the other side would argue that. But also I think you got to, I also work with really smart people. I stay in my lane, and doesn't mean that we don't invest in the stock market when we have professionals to help us with that, that have that belief and that certainty of conviction was that it comes down to, right? But if I'm for myself or somebody's looking for, where to invest, my comfort is real estate, mostly multifamily, mobile home parks, RV storage, self-storage, RV parks, stuff that people really love and want to do and need. Yeah.
Outside of the just investing part, do you think that, I'll use the tax thing, for example, do you think there's always going to be taxes, right? No matter what, there's always going to be taxes.
Sure, yeah.
And do you think that there's always going to be some form of way to avoid is not the right word, but to lower?
Defer is a better word. Defer.
Right.
And sometimes you eliminate the estate tax, right? So,
but do you think in no matter what system, do you think a government will always incentivize through that?
As long as there's freedom, right? Because otherwise, what's capitalism, right? Capitalism has got to have a carrot and a stick, right? And the carrot to me has got to, it's got to be tax, incentives, right? Back to where we were at. And the problem becomes if they tax too much, they completely demotivate or take away all of the incentive because basically we're just building the government stream versus the American dream, which is the family, right? And so that's always going to be the rub, right? What's too much? What's the tax? I mean, there's a cool video on this that I love. It talks about 3 brothers, right? And it's on Prager University, PragerU on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
and it's a story of 3 brothers. They live on this cul-de-sac. They all grew up in the same household. They're all married. One chooses to work 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, and his wife doesn't work. One, it's about 40 hours a week. The other one, they both work 60 hours a week. One spends everything they make. One invests and saves, and the other one's somewhere in the middle. And it comes up to a vote, and the vote is how to prepare all of the roads, right? And they live on the same road, right? And it's like, there's potholes. We need to fix it. And so the cost is going to be like $100K. And so they get together and like, hey, brothers, how are we going to do this? And then the brother who's saving and investing and working 60, 80 hours a week says, why don't we just split it 3 ways? We're all going to benefit equally. And the other younger brother, the guy or the one who's not making as much, goes, well, what do you mean? Like, you make 3 times as much as us. You should pay more. And he's like, what do you mean? We're all going to benefit from this. Like, you don't work as much. You don't invest as much. You spend everything you make. And a lot of my investments a lot of my income's coming from these investments, right?
Yeah.
And the guy in the middle is like, well, I kind of agree with this brother, but and they flip to the progressive tax system and they go, the progressive tax system, it's going to be mostly paid by this person. This guy's going to save a little bit if he votes with this person, and these two vote this person out. Which you just look at that and you go, this is the battle of America and freedom, right? Yep. And the idea. And so I part of what I believe is, financial education, right? For kids, for parents, for adults, but tax education, right?
Yeah.
Like understanding that, because again, back to the 84 trillion, if we don't have the tax flow mindset here, it's like the Trojan horse that's coming in, what's it, to Athens? Was that what it was, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's just 18 years, it's just cruising. Right. And if it gets to the other side and we don't have these incentives and these, us professionals helping to educate people and execute on these strategies, the government's going to be like, got it all.
Yep.
And now it's like, talk about like Bitcoin versus, regular currency, right? Part of the advantage and the freedom aspect is they can't just manipulate and overspend and just print all this money. And that's the point, right? Like freedom and flexibility with capital. And that's the battle we're in.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Last question, 2 minutes,
Sure.
if that, or a minute or two.
Sure.
Most people listening right now are going to be like, this is great. Awesome. There's going to be this small percentage of people that are like, this is so cool. I want to geek out. Right.
Yeah.
So for the small percentage of those people that are like, I want to geek out on this just because, where do they start? Like, do you have a book that you recommend? I mean, yours obviously, but like, is there a topic, an angle, a focus? Like that's a good starting point for understanding this.
Right. Good question. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you haven't read that book, it's called The Great Purple Book. Get that book. Yep. Okay. And if you have kids or even, have kids, start playing the game of, it's called the Getting Out of the Rat Race, Rich Dad Poor Dad series. So I'm playing that with my kids right now. But I mean, we can't take for granted just budgets, cash flow statements, financials, like there's just so much that you can't take for granted. Right. And so I think that's a good place to start. If you haven't read that book, read that book. If you're a business professional, you're like, I got all the basics, Brett, you can go to experttaxsecrets.com and we do all of the coaching for business professionals to execute this for their business. Because ultimately who I'm speaking to is not just the person who owns 15 million of Bitcoin. And that's a part of it. Right. We actually, our really Dream 100 is the business professional. It's the CPA, it's the tax attorney, it's the financial advisor. It is the influencer like a Russell who has influence over a lot of folks that are potentially exiting. That's really the person we're trying to reach and either, JV with and or just help them understand the strategy so they can help their clients because they have the know, like, and trust for 5, 10, 20 years. So we're going to work with that. So I would say those are 2 spots.
Russell, right?
So I actually haven't met him yet. I've only ever seen him from the stage.
We gotta make that happen.
Yeah. So it's part of why, I'd love to meet him. So but I'm reading his books and all the things, right? Yeah. So totally inspired by everything he's doing. So those are 2 spots, but I guess just financial education. I don't know. Yeah. There's a ton of books,
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time and sharing so openly. This was fun. And we'll have to do a follow up. Maybe sometime when you're in Denver, you can swing by. Yep. We have a couple rapid fire questions to wrap up. But before we do that, we got the book, which we'll link down below. Any other website? You mentioned some websites. Is there any other place that you'd send people? Yeah, so brettswarts.com, and that kind of gives you the best 1031 plan. It gives you links to the socials. It gives you, it gives you expert tax secrets. It gives you capital gains tax solutions.com. So that is a good place to send everyone to. It's BRETTSWARTS.com, brettswarts.com. Cool. Awesome. All right. A couple rapid fire questions for you. These are just more fun, lighter hearted to kind of get to know you. What's one bucket list item or thing that you have not yet done in your life?
Yeah, so it's 1,000 extraordinary days and 100 unique locations with my kids. So we have 5 children. My wife, Melanie, and I married close to 15 years. And our main goal, we just moved from California to Florida about 1.5 years ago, is to lead and build extraordinary kids. And part of that is living an extraordinary adventure. And that has to do with
I love that.
like mission trips. That has to do with travel. That has to do with, going to conferences. We homeschool our kids. And so we're that's like the big bucket list. So we're like on day like 290, 295. We just did 5 days in DC. They just did 5 days in Tennessee. And then we're going to do 5 days on the beach coming up here with the family. So just 1,000 extraordinary days, extraordinary, and 100 unique locations.
Love it.
Before they're 18, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, before they're 18 is the goal.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. Awesome. Who's one person that you want to meet before you die, or before they
who's one person I want to meet before I die?
Yeah.
I would say the one that comes to mind would be like a Lou Holtz, Lou Holtz.
Oh, yeah. Lou Holtz. Yeah.
Yep. I would have said John Wooden or like a Coach K. Coach K. He's John Wooden's died now. Yeah. He's passed away. But John, like a Coach K. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
What's one book besides your own that you think every entrepreneur should read?
Never Split the Difference, but let me take that a little deeper. It's by Chris Voss. You need to watch the masterclass. Okay. Cause I read the physical book. I listened to it on Audible, but when I watched the masterclass, I literally watched it 50 times.
Wow.
Okay? It's that powerful. So it's kind of like reading expert secrets for the first time. I thought I knew how to sell and communicate until I read that book.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I thought I knew how to sell and communicate until I watched that masterclass. Yeah. So it's really powerful. Chris Voss is called The Art of Negotiation. Get it on masterclass.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Last question. And this is kind of a deeper question, but we intentionally don't prep you for it. So fast forward to the end of your life. You're on your deathbed. Every person that you've impacted, right, forgets everything you ever told them, right? So they're memory wiped clean. However, you get to leave them with one final message, piece of advice that they will believe 100% and live out with no context or, no convincing needed. Believe it at face value. What's the message or piece of advice? Yeah,
it's simple. It's John 10:10. The thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come to give you life and give it abundantly. And I'm a Christian, so I believe in Jesus as our Savior, and He's come to give us life and give it abundantly, right? And so just love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Believe in Jesus. That's it. Be a believer, man. Believe that He's here He's here now, and He's here. He came and He saved us, and that would be my one thing if I could say believe and I'm trying to live that out, that would be it.
Amazing. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And all right, everyone, that's all for today. That was a deep one. Until next time, we'll see you then. Peace.